I'm staring at a blinking cursor, a tiny black heart pulsing on the screen, a single vertical line of black beating a rhythm for a headache that's taken up residence behind my eyes. Thump, thump, thump. The hammer inside my skull keeps time with the cursor. An ad banner for a design competition. I'll never win flickers in the corner of the monitor. The prize is a trip to Stockholm. I can't even seem to manage a trip to the grocery store. The air in my apartment is thick. It has a taste. It's the flavor of stale coffee, dust, and something else. Something I can never quite name. Faintly metallic, like an old penny held on the tongue. I've been sitting in this worn-out office chair for hours, trying to force a logo into existence for a client who uses words like synergy and disruption without a trace of irony. The pixels swim, the migraine tightens its grip, a hot band of pressure from temple to temple. I push myself up. The room, a cramped studio that is my entire world, lurches to the side before righting itself. One room for living, for sleeping, for working. The window looks out onto a solid wall of reddish-brown brick. So close I could probably read the mason's signature if there was one. It's permanently dusk in here. My throat is dry. I need water. A beer. Anything. I shuffle past the drafting table. Its surface a chaotic mess of sketches and half-empty mugs. My reflection in the dark laptop screen is a pale, distorted ghost. I don't look at it for long. My destination is the refrigerator, a behemoth of off-white enamel humming loudly in the corner. It's the most constant sound in my life, that low, electric drone, a mechanical mantra. My hand reaches for the handle. It freezes an inch away from the cold metal. Something is there. A single sheet of yellow legal pad paper, stuck to the door with a cheap souvenir magnet from a gas station I don't remember visiting. It has a list on it, a to-do list. I stare. The handwriting is mine. I would know it anywhere. It's the same precise, slightly forward-slanting print I've cultivated since college. Clean, organized, logical. I see the idiosyncratic loop on the letter G, the one I practiced for weeks to get just right, because I thought it looked professional. It's mine. Unmistakably, terrifyingly mine. I have no memory of writing it. My eyes scan the first line. My heart is pounding, a frantic drum against my ribs. 1. Take out trash. Okay. Normal. The bag by the door is overflowing. I was meaning to do that. A small knot of tension in my chest loosens. Maybe I wrote it this morning in a caffeine-fueled haze before the migraine set in. These memory lapses have been happening. Little blips, forgetting why I walked into a room, misplacing my keys. Stress, I told myself. Just stress. I read the second line. 2. Clip all fingernails down to the quick. My blood froze. I can hear my heart pounding in my chest now, a loud, wet thudding in my ears that drowns out the refrigerator's hum. I look down at my own hands. My nails are neat, trimmed. I'm meticulous about them. Down to the quick. The phrase conjures a visceral image of pink, sensitive flesh, of a sharp, wincing pain, of blood welling up in tiny red beads. This is impossible. I snatch the list from the fridge. The magnet clatters to the floor. The paper is cold, unnaturally so, like it was stored in the freezer. Its crisp yellow feels alien in my trembling hand. What the hell is going on? My eyes scan the room. The door is locked. The heavy deadbolt is thrown. The chain is on. I locked it myself hours ago. It's a ritual. The window is sealed shut with layers of old paint. No one could have gotten in. No one. Is this a joke? But who would play it? I don't have friends who come over. I barely speak to my neighbors. My life has shrunk to the dimensions of this room, this screen, this headache. My head was spinning with questions. So, who? Reflexively, I turn to my desk, shoving aside a stack of invoices. I find an old sticky note from last week, a short grocery list. Milk, coffee, bread. I lay it on the desk, under the bright, focused light of my work lamp. I smooth out the crumpled to-do list beside it. My breath catches. My throat is dry. It's a perfect match. Not just similar, a perfect forensic match. The exact same pressure on the pen for the downstrokes. The way my T is crossed just slightly above the line. And there it is, the signature loop of my G. Identical. One soul, one hand, wrote both of these documents. A cold sweat breaks out on the back of my neck. This wasn't a prank. This wasn't some stranger. This came from me. A part of me I don't know. A part that wants me to hurt myself. A wave of nausea rolls through me. I crush the yellow paper in my fist. The crinkling sound is violent, an act of defiance in the stuffy air. I will not be a part of this. This is madness. My own handwriting, my own apartment, turned against me. I stride towards the overflowing trash can beside the door. This piece of poison belongs in there, buried, forgotten. My hand moves over the can. My fingers should open. They should release the wad of paper. They don't. My own hand, my own muscles are refusing my command. I try to force it, to mentally pry my fingers apart. They stay clenched in a tight, white-knuckled fist. I feel my own tendons straining, a war being fought inside my own arm. My heart hammers. My muscles tense up. I'm so nervous I forget to breathe. Slowly, against every screaming command of my conscious mind, my fingers begin to uncurl. They move with a horrifying, deliberate grace. Not a surrender, but a different kind of will asserting itself. The crumpled ball of paper smooths itself out against my sweaty palm, the sharp creases softening. I feel as if an invisible hand is squeezing me. I can't throw it away. I can't. With a shudder that racks my whole body, I lower my arm. I look down. At the list again, its surface now a topography of frantic creases. My eyes fall back to the numbered items, and I see it. My whole body shakes uncontrollably. There's a third item. 3. Smash the bathroom mirror. It wasn't there before. I know it. I swear it wasn't there just a minute ago. I had read the list. I had held it. I had stared at it. There were only 2 items. A mundane chore and a command for self-mutilation. Now there were 3. The ink is the same. The handwriting is the same. It sits there below the second item, as if it had been there all along. How can this be? What is this? I close my eyes, hard, squeezing them shut until spots of color burst in the darkness. This is the migraine. It has to be. A hallucination. A waking nightmare brought on by stress and caffeine and sleepless nights. I take a deep, ragged breath. When I open my eyes, it will be gone. It will be a 2-item list again. It has to be. I open them. 3. Smash the bathroom mirror. The words are still there, solid, black, unwavering. The refrigerator hums, that constant, grounding drone, the soundtrack to my isolation. The moment my eyes finish reading the word mirror, the hum cuts out. The apartment plunges into a silence so profound it's a physical weight. The sudden absence of the sound is more shocking than a gunshot. It is a heavy, listening silence, a waiting silence. The air grows thick. The building's pipes groan somewhere in the walls, a long, mournful sound, and then even that fades away. There is only my breathing, loud and harsh in the stillness, and the list in my hand, and the quiet, dark doorway of the bathroom, waiting. I stand in the center of the room. The silence is a physical weight, not an absence of noise, but a presence. A heavy blanket smothering the air. The drone of the refrigerator is gone, and in its place is a ringing in my ears, a high, thin whine like a dying nerve. I can hear my heart pounding in my chest. Each beat is a heavy, wet thump against my ribs, a desperate drum in the vast stillness. The list is still in my hand. The paper has absorbed the sweat from my palm, becoming soft and pliant. The words seem to glow in the dim light, lit by some internal, malevolent energy. 2. Clip all fingernails down to the quick. My eyes are locked on that line. The letters are my own, the slant precise, the pressure familiar, but the intent behind them is alien, a hostile parasite wearing my skin. I read the words again and again. They don't change. They don't vanish. An itch starts in the tips of my fingers. It's not a physical itch on the skin. It's deeper, in the tissue, in the bone. A nervous energy, a static charge building under my nails. A need. My own hand begins to tremble, the one holding the list. But the tremor isn't from fear. Not entirely. It's anticipation. A strange, eager vibration that horrifies me. I look down at my other hand, splayed open. My nails are neat, trimmed, clean, a bad testament to a life of order, of control. I am a graphic designer. My hands are my tools, my livelihood. I keep them pristine. The list says otherwise. The list says this neatness is a lie. What is this all about? With a choked gasp, I throw the list. It flutters and skids across the polished wood floor, coming to rest near the leg of my work desk. I will not do this. This is a breakdown, a fever dream. I need to ground myself. Work is logic, work is control. I lurch towards my desk chair, my legs stiff and uncooperative. I sit, I grab the mouse. My hand feels disconnected, a clumsy appendage of meat and bone. I stare at the screen, the blinking cursor. Thump, thump, thump. It still keeps time with the hammer in my skull, but now it feels different. Accusatory. I try to click on the design software icon. My fingers won't obey. My eyes dart away from the screen, drawn by a will that is not my own. They find the yellow paper on the floor. My gaze travels from the paper back to my hands on the desk. They look wrong. Too clean. Too perfect. The itch intensifies. It's a maddening thrum, a silent scream in my nerve endings. Reflexively, I bring my left hand up to my face. My thumb finds the cuticle of my index finger. I pick at it. A tiny, familiar, nervous habit. But tonight, it's a prelude. A concession, a surrender. The small, sharp sting as I pull a hangnail feels like a promise. I stop. My breath is shallow. My throat is dry. The pressure in my head is building again. A crushing vice. The silence of the apartment presses in on all sides. It wants something. The list wants something. Something inside me breaks. A dam of reason I didn't even know was there crumbles into dust. Without a moment's hesitation, I push my chair back so hard it screeches across the floor, the sound a violation of the stillness. I am on my feet. I am walking. My destination is the dark doorway at the end of the room. I don't decide to go. I am already going. My feet know the path. Each step is heavy, fated. The floorboards are cool under my socks. The air grows colder as I enter the bathroom. I don't turn on the light. The weak glow from the main room is enough. It casts long, distorted shadows. The small, windowless space feels like a tomb. I face the medicine cabinet. Its mirrored door reflects a dark, warped version of me, a hollow-eyed silhouette. I can see my own shape, but my features are lost in the gloom. My hand reaches out. My fingers find the small metal latch. I open it. The clippers are there. They sit on the middle glass shelf, next to a bottle of aspirin and a tube of toothpaste. They are simple, made of cheap, shiny metal. Under the sliver of light from the doorway, they gleam. Not like metal, like a surgical instrument, like a weapon. I pick them up. The metal is cold, impossibly cold, against my warm skin. It feels heavier than it should. I hold them in my right hand. I look at my left. My whole body shakes, uncontrollably. A tremor that starts in my gut and radiates outwards to my limbs. This is madness, sheer, undiluted madness. I am standing in my own bathroom in the dark, about to mutilate myself because of a list I don't remember writing. And yet, the pressure in my head, it's unbearable. A screaming spike of pain. The list is the only answer. The tasks are the only cure. I lift the clippers to the thumbnail of my left hand. I position the curved blades, not at the white tip, further down, much further down, over the tender pink nail bed. I hesitate. My heart is a frantic bird beating against my ribs. I can stop. I can throw the clippers in the toilet, flush them away. I can run out of this apartment. I can scream for help. Can I? My thumb presses down on the lever. Click. The sound is gunshot loud in the small room, a sharp, cracking report that echoes off the tile. A bite of pure electric pain shoots up my thumb, a white-hot flash. I gasp. My eyes water. But beneath the pain, something else. The pressure in my skull recedes, just a fraction. A wave pulling back from a shore of agony. I stare at my thumb. A perfect crescent-shaped indentation marks the spot. A tiny bead of dark blood begins to well up from under the nail. It's beautiful. It's terrible. The itch in my other fingers is a roar now. I move to my index finger. There is no hesitation this time. My hand is steady. My purpose is clear. Click. Another jolt of pain, another wave of relief washing through my head. The migraine is lessened again. This is the medicine. This is the cure. Blood joins its brother on my thumb, a tiny wet jewel in the gloom, one by one. I am methodical, an assembly line of self-destruction, middle finger, click, pain, relief, blood, ring finger, click, pain, relief, blood, pinky finger, click, pain, relief, blood. My left hand is a mangled ruin. Each fingertip throbs with a sharp, clean hurt. The pain is a grounding force, an anchor in the storm of whatever is happening to my mind. I can feel the warm stickiness of blood on my skin. I switch hands. The clippers are slick now. I start on my right hand. The process is faster, more efficient. The part of my brain that screamed in protest is gone. It's been silenced, erased. All that is left is the task. Thumb, click, index, click, middle, click, ring, click, pinky, click. It is done. I stand over the porcelain sink, my arms braced against the cool, smooth sides. I open my hands and stare at them. All 10 fingers are weeping blood. The pain is not dull. It is sharp, acute, a constant signal from each nerve ending. My body is still shaking, a violent post-exertion shudder. I turn on the tap. Cold water streams out, hissing into the basin. I rinse my hands. The water turns pink, swirling down the drain in a bloody vortex. The pain intensifies under the cold flow, but the pressure in my head, it's gone. Completely. For the first time in weeks, the hammer is silent. The hot band of pressure has vanished. My mind feels scoured clean, empty, sharp. A cold sweat breaks out on the back of my neck. I stare at my mangled fingertips, at the raw, sensitive quick exposed to the air. The act is done. Task number 2 is complete. A nauseating wave of accomplishment washes over me. A job well done. I did it. I look up, my eyes meeting the reflection in the medicine cabinet. I still can't see my face clearly. Just a dark shape. My own ghost. Then I hear it. It comes from the square metal grate of the air vent high on the wall above the toilet. A sound so small, so out of place, it rips through the stillness of the room, and an icy hand squeezes my heart. It is a giggle. A small, high-pitched giggle. A child's laugh. It's not joyful. It's not playful. It's thin and reedy, distorted by the metal ducts it travels through. It echoes slightly, as if from a great distance away. The laugh is short, just 2 notes, hee, and it sounds pleased. A chill ran down my spine. The fine hairs on my arms and the back of my neck stand on end. The empty, clean feeling in my head evaporates, replaced by a cold, crawling dread that is 1,000 times worse than the headache. The pain in my fingers is suddenly a screaming blaze. The giggle fades. The silence rushes back in to fill the void. But it's different now. It is no longer an empty silence. It's a listening silence, a waiting silence. And I know with a certainty that freezes the marrow in my bones that I am not alone. The giggle is gone. The sound is swallowed by the metal vent, leaving a vacuum in its place. I am leaning over the sink. My knuckles are white where I grip the porcelain edge. In the basin, the water runs, a steady, indifferent hiss. It's pink, a pale, swirling rose color, washing over my mangled fingertips before spiraling down the drain. Each drop of cold water on the raw, exposed quick of my nails is a fresh spark of pain, a clean, sharp, electrifying sting. It's the only thing that feels real. My heart is pounding, a heavy, frantic drum against my ribs. I can hear it in my ears, a wet, desperate beat that fills the sudden, listening silence. I lift my head, slowly. The movement feels stiff, mechanical, as if my neck is full of rust and old wires. My eyes find my reflection in the dark glass of the medicine cabinet door. It's a silhouette, a man-shaped hole in the dim light slanting in from the other room. I can't see my expression. I don't want to. I know what's there. The giggle. Hee. It echoes in my skull, not as a sound, but as a memory. A fresh, sharp memory scored into my brain. Pleased. It sounded pleased. A shiver runs down the spine. It starts at the base of my neck and spiders down my back, cold and electric. I have to get out of this room. I have to get away from that vent. My hand, trembling, reaches out and slams the faucet handle down. The hiss of water cuts off abruptly. The sudden lack of sound is a blow. Now all I can hear is the frantic drumming of my own heart and a single maddening drip, 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 from the faucet into the bloody basin. I push myself away from the sink. My legs are unsteady. I stumble backwards, out of the small tiled coffin of the bathroom and into the main space of my apartment. The air here is warmer, thicker, smelling of dust and stale coffee. I take a breath, and another. My eyes dart around the room, scanning the familiar shadows, searching for something out of place. Everything is a threat. The leaning tower of books, the coat hanging on the back of the door, looking like a hunched man. The single red light on the modem, a malevolent, sleepless eye. What the hell is going on? My gaze lands on the kitchen counter. It's a small peninsula of cheap, scratched laminate that separates the living area from the stove and refrigerator. And on it, lying flat on the white surface, is the sheet of yellow legal paper. The list. I freeze. My back pressed against the wall. I didn't put it there. I threw it. I remember the flutter of the paper as it skidded across the hardwood floor. I remember it landing near the leg of my desk. It's not there now. It's on the counter, as if waiting for me. Who moved it? Who is behind all this? My head was spinning with questions. Walking step by step, my feet barely making a sound on the floor, I approach it. My mangled hands are held out from my body, open and useless, throbbing in time with my pulse. As I get closer, I see the pen. My favorite black Pilot G2. It's lying next to the list. I stop at the edge of the counter, holding my breath and listening. The building is making its usual noises. A groan of pipes in the wall. A distant rumble, I tell myself, is the elevator. But they sound different now. Not mundane. They sound like a living thing stirring in its sleep. I look down at the list. My blood runs cold. 2 neat black lines have been drawn through the first 2 items. The ink is dark. A confident slash. A line through 1. Take out trash. And another through 2. Clip all fingernails down to the quick. It's my handwriting. The way the line starts thick and tapers off is mine. The slight tremor is mine. I did not do this. I do not remember picking up that pen. I do not remember crossing anything off. The pain in my fingers screams that I completed the second task, but this act of validation, of marking it complete, it's a blank space in my mind, a missing reel of film. My eyes, against my will, drop to the next line. The paper seems to hum under my gaze, the words vibrating with a low, hungry energy. 3. Smash the bathroom mirror. My muscles tense up. Every single one of them, from my jaw to my calves. They lock up tight, turning my body into a rigid statue of dread. The air is so thick that breathing is difficult. I am looking at a command, an order, and the part of me that obeyed the last one is stirring again. A deep, cold, eager hum inside my gut. No, I will not. No, I whisper. The sound is a dry rasp in the listening room. It sounds like a stranger's voice. I need proof. Proof that I am still in control. Proof that the world outside this room still functions, that it hasn't been infected by whatever is happening in here. I need to hear a human voice, a normal voice. My phone. I turn, my movements jerky and uncoordinated. I lurch toward my desk where my phone is charging, my sanctuary of logic, the portal to the real world. Every step is a fight against a strange, invisible current pulling me back toward the bathroom, toward the mirror. I can feel its cold silver gaze on my back. My raw fingertips ache as I reach for the phone. The plastic is cool. I snatch it up from its cradle. The screen is dark. My reflection is there. A distorted, terrified face with wide, dark eyes. I unlock it. The grid of familiar apps is a comfort. I'll call someone. Anyone. I'll tell them I'm not well, that I need help. My thumb hovers over the green phone icon. It happens before I can press it. The phone vibrates violently in my hand, the buzz a shocking electric jolt. It starts to ring, a loud, cheerful digital chime that is the most terrifying sound I have ever heard. The screen is lit up. An incoming call. The name on the screen makes my stomach drop into my shoes. The client. It's Marcus Thorne. The big project. The one I've been killing myself over for weeks. Why is he calling me? It's after 10 o'clock at night. My heart hammers against my ribs. I have to answer. I have to pretend everything is normal. I swipe to accept, my thumb leaving a faint, bloody smear on the glass. I bring the phone to my ear. Hello? My voice is weak, thin. I clear my throat. Jack Miller speaking. Jack, there you are. The voice on the other end is impossibly smooth, polished. A voice made for boardrooms and expensive whiskey. It's calm but carries an unnerving undertone of amusement. Just calling to check in. Marcus, I say, trying to force strength into my words. It's late. Is everything okay with the mock-ups? The mock-ups are fine, Jack. Excellent work, as always. You have a meticulous eye. A pause. I can hear the smile in his voice. I was calling about your other work, your progress for the evening. Cold sweat breaks out on the back of my neck. I grip the phone tighter, the pain from my fingers a dull throb against the sharp spike of fear. My other work. I don't understand. I finished the revisions you sent over this afternoon. He chuckles. It's not a friendly sound, it's low and predatory. The sound of a cat enjoying a cornered mouse. Not that work, Jack. Your other tasks, the more personal ones. Are you making progress? The room seems to tilt. The blood drains from my face. I can feel it. I look from the phone in my hand to the yellow list on the counter. The two things are connected. They are part of the same monstrous circuit. What? I whisper. What are you talking about? Come now, Jack. The smooth voice purrs, dripping with false patience. Don't play coy. It's unbecoming. You're a man of logic, of lists, of seeing things through to the end. Another pause, pregnant with meaning. Check your list. Click. He hangs up. The line goes dead. I stand there, the phone pressed hard against my ear, listening to the electronic silence. My whole body shakes uncontrollably. I lower the phone. I look at the dark screen. The call wasn't a hallucination. It was real. He knew. He knew. The outside world isn't a refuge. It's watching. It's part of this. The client, the neighbor, Mrs. Gable, the child in the vent. They're all watching. They're all waiting. Panic, pure and undiluted, claws its way up my throat. I want to scream. I want to run. I want to smash things. Smash. The word lands in my brain like a stone. It's not my thought. It's an echo of the list. A command. A horrible, undeniable compulsion begins to build inside me. It's a physical force, a magnetic pull. My body wants to obey. I fight it. I bite down on my lips so hard I taste the coppery tang of blood. I dig the heels of my feet into the floor. I am in control. This is my body, my mind. But my feet begin to slide. It's a slow, dragging motion. My socks whisper against the wood. I am being pulled, inch by inch, back toward the bathroom. My mind is a spectator, a terrified prisoner inside a body that has become a puppet. My own muscles betray me, contracting and moving with a will that is not mine. No, I grunt, the sound torn from my chest. No, please. My feet don't stop. They drag me across the floor, past the counter with its damning list, and into the dark doorway of the bathroom. I am standing before the sink again, before the medicine cabinet, before the mirror. I look up. This time, I don't see a silhouette. The light from the main room catches the silvered glass just right. I see my face, my own face, pale, sweaty, eyes wide with a stark, animal terror. My lips are parted, a dark wound I just inflicted on myself. I see my mangled, bloody hands hanging limp at my sides. This is me, Jack Miller, a graphic designer, a logical man, a man who is losing his mind. The reflection stares back. It looks just as terrified as I feel. Its eyes are wells of desperation. This is impossible. The pressure in my head is back. A faint, low thrum. It wants this. The list wants this. The thing in the vent wants this. The man on the phone wants this. They all want me to do it. And a dark, traitorous part of me, a part I never knew existed, wants to do it too. It's the mirror. It's the source. It's showing me this pathetic, terrified creature, this victim. I hate it. I hate the face it shows me. In a last, final act of what feels like defiance but might be surrender, I clench my right fist. Pain explodes from my fingertips, a blinding, white-hot agony as the raw skin and nail beds are crushed together. The pain is a clarion call. It cuts through the fog. I am not that man in the mirror. With a scream that is pure rage and terror, I swing. My arm is a piston, my fist is a rock. Time seems to stretch, to warp. I see my fist, bloody and clenched, hurtling toward the terrified face of my own reflection. The sound is an explosion, a sharp, deafening crack that echoes in the tiny room a dozen times over. The glass doesn't just break, it detonates. A shower of silvered shards erupts toward me. I feel a sharp sting on my cheek, another on my forehead. The world dissolves into a waterfall of falling glass. My eyes, wide and unblinking, follow the largest piece as it tumbles through the air in slow motion. It's a jagged dagger of glass, and as it turns, it catches my reflection one last time. And I see it. It is my face. My fist is raised, the knuckles bloody and split open. But the expression is not one of horror. It is not one of pain or fear. The reflection is smiling. A wide, triumphant, impossibly cruel smile. Its eyes are glinting with a terrible, ecstatic light. It looks proud. It looks satisfied. It looks free. The shard hits the tiled floor and shatters into 1,000 more pieces. I stand there, my arm still raised, my bleeding fist trembling in the air. I stare at the empty, gaping hole in the cabinet door where my face used to be. The man in the mirror is gone, and he is pleased with our work. I am on my knees. The tile is cold against my shins. A universe of glittering glass surrounds me, a shattered constellation on the white floor. It crunches softly under my weight. One sharp piece has laid open my cheek, a thin, warm line of blood I can feel trailing down toward my jaw. I don't feel the pain. I don't feel anything but the after-image of that smile burned onto the backs of my eyelids. Triumphant, viciously pleased. It wasn't me. That was not my face. He. The sound, when it comes, is no longer a surprise. It's an answer. It trickles from the grimy metal slats of the vent, a silver thread of sound that weaves itself around the last, faint tinkle of a falling glass shard. It's a sound of approval. A reward for a job well done. The child's giggle syncs perfectly with the crack of the mirror shattering. It's a perfect, chilling harmony. I stare at the gaping void in the medicine cabinet. My reflection is gone. The man in the mirror is gone. A part of me is gone. My arm hangs limp, my fist a mess of blood and torn skin. The stinging in my knuckles is a distant signal from a body I no longer command. My whole body shakes uncontrollably, a tremor that starts deep in my bones and works its way out. I need to get up. I need to get out of this room. But my legs are lead. My mind is a spectator watching a stranger's ruin. What the hell is going on? That's when I hear it. Knock, knock, knock. The sound is not on the cabinet or the wall. It's on my front door. Hard, sharp, definite. It slices through the thick air of the apartment like a razor. I'm so nervous I forget to breathe. My heart, which had been a frantic drum, stops dead. Then it starts again with a violent, painful lurch that slams against my ribs. Who is it? Who would be at my door at this hour? The giggle from the vent has stopped. The building's grunts and groans have stopped. Everything has stopped. The world is holding its breath and listening, waiting for what I will do. I push myself up. My hand presses against the cold porcelain of the sink for balance, leaving a bloody print. Shards of glass grind under my shoes. Moving cautiously, trying not to make a sound. I step out of the bathroom's wreckage. The main room is dim, lit only by the hellish red eye of the modem and the pale, indifferent glow of the city filtering through the grimy window. My eyes are fixed on the door, a solid slab of wood that suddenly feels as thin as paper. Who is behind all this? I slide along the wall, my back pressed against the cool, textured paint. Each step is a lifetime. The floorboards don't creak. My own apartment is conspiring against me with its silence. I reach the door, my heart pounding in my ears. I'm holding my breath and listening. There is nothing. No shuffling feet, no breathing, just the weight of a presence on the other side. I lean forward. My eye finds the small brass-ringed circle of the peephole. The fisheye lens is a tiny, dark portal. I put my eye to it, and a milky white orb stares directly back at me. I almost scream. I jerk back, slamming my head against the wall. A jolt of pain, sharp and real. My hand flies up to cover my mouth. It's an eye, a single cloudy eye, magnified and distorted by the lens, pressed right against the other side. It's unblinking. It knows I'm here. It was waiting for me to look. Mrs. Gable. A shiver runs down the spine. It feels like a centipede crawling its way down my vertebrae. I saw her eye. She saw mine. The connection was made. I can't pretend I'm not here. I have to open the door. The thought is not a choice. It feels like a rule. My hand, slick with a mixture of sweat and blood, closes around the cold brass of the doorknob. It turns with a well-oiled click. I pull the door inward, just a crack. Not enough to let a person in, but enough to break the seal. She's standing there, shrouded in a faded floral housecoat. The hallway light casts a jaundiced glow on her wrinkled face. Her other eye, the good one, is dark and sharp. It inspects me from the cut on my cheek to my bleeding hand. Her voice when she speaks is the sound of dry, rustling leaves. "The whistling," she says, her head cocked slightly. It's stopped. My throat is dry. I swallow. I wasn't whistling, Mrs. Gable. She ignores me. Her gaze drifts past my shoulder, into the apartment. Her eyes seem to find the yellow legal pad on my kitchen counter instantly. I see a flicker of something in her expression. Not surprise. Recognition. She gives a slow, knowing nod, a simple up and down movement of her chin that feels like a judgment, like a signature on a contract. She looks back at me. Her voice drops, losing its reedy quality, becoming low and lucid. It's the most terrifying thing I've ever heard. "Some chores just have to be done, dearie." She doesn't wait for a response. She turns and shuffles down the hallway, her worn slippers scraping against the linoleum. In seconds, she is gone, around the corner. I stand there, the door ajar, the stale hallway air mixing with the thick atmosphere of my room. My mind was blank. It was not a question she was asking. It was a statement, a confirmation. She knew. She was part of it. The whistling that I never made. The chores. She knew. Rage, hot and sudden, boils up inside me. I slam the door shut. The sound echoes like a gunshot in the apartment. The deadbolt clicks home with a sound of finality. I've locked her out. Or have I locked myself in? My hands are shaking. I lean my forehead against the cool wood of the door, taking deep, ragged breaths. I'm trying to piece it together. The list, the client, the child, Mrs. Gable. It's a constellation of madness, and I am the dark star at its center. I turn around. My eyes scan the room, and I see it. The list. It's still on the counter, a single sheet of yellow paper under the stark light of the kitchen. I walk toward it. My feet feel heavy. My legs feel weak. I get to the counter and look down. My blood runs cold. 3 neat black lines. A line through 1, take out trash. A line through 2, clip all fingernails down to the quick. And now, a new slash, dark and confident, through 3, smash the bathroom mirror. The ink is still wet. It has a slight sheen under the light. My black Pilot G2 lies next to it, cap off. I did not cross that out. I remember the explosion of glass, the smile in the shard, the knock at the door. I do not remember picking up that pen. I do not remember the satisfying stroke of ink across the paper. That moment is a black hole. Another missing reel of film. My eyes, against every screaming instinct in my body, move down the page, and my heart sinks. There is a new line. It wasn't there before. I would have seen it. I would have remembered. Written in the same familiar, hateful script, my own, is a new task, a 4th command. 4. Burn the photo. The words seem to lift off the page. The air is so thick that breathing is difficult. I know the photo. Of course I know the photo. It's the only one I allow myself. The only one I brought with me from my childhood home. The one that sits in a simple silver frame on the corner of my desk. My parents. I turn my head slowly, a mechanical movement. My gaze travels across the room to my desk, and there it is. The silver frame catches the light. Inside it, 2 faces smile back at me across the years. My mother, her head tilted, a laugh just starting on her lips. My father, his arm around her, a look of quiet, content pride in his eyes. It was taken on their 20th anniversary, a year before the accident. It's the last picture I have of them together, the last picture of them happy. This is impossible. No, I whisper. The word is a dead thing in the air. No, not that. Anything but that. The command on the page is not a suggestion. It's an inevitability. I can feel it pulling at me, the same monstrous current that dragged me into the bathroom. It's a hook in my gut, and it's starting to reel me in. I fight it. I grip the edge of the counter, my bloody knuckles turning white. The pain from my crushed fingertips is a screaming alarm. Don't do this. Don't you dare do this. I close my eyes. I see their faces, their smiles. You work for me, a voice in my head says. It's the smooth boardroom voice of the client. Check your list. Some chores just have to be done, whispers Mrs. Gable's dry leaf voice. Hee hee, giggles the child in the vent. They are all here, in my head, in my apartment. They are the audience, and the show must go on. My grip on the counter loosens. My hand falls to my side. My body turns, slowly, to face the desk. I am a puppet again, a passenger. My feet begin to move. One step, the floor moans under my weight. Another step. I pass the bookshelf, its dark shape looming. I am screaming inside, a silent, frantic, primal scream. Stop, please. Somebody make me stop. But my legs keep moving. They carry me to the desk, to the silver frame. My hand reaches out. Not the bloody one, the other one, the clean one, the traitor. My fingers, steady and sure, close around the frame. The metal is cool. I lift it. Their smiling faces fill my vision. Mom, Dad, I'm sorry. My body turns again. A slow, deliberate pivot away from the desk and toward the small kitchen alcove. Toward the stove. It's a short walk. A funeral march. Each step is a betrayal. I am standing in front of the stove now. The photo is clutched in my left hand. I can see their eyes in the dim light. They're watching me, asking me why. My right hand, my bloody, mangled right hand, reaches for the stove. It moves with a purpose that is not my own. My mind is a prison, and I can only watch through the bars as my own flesh and bone carries out this desecration. My fingers find the hard plastic of the knob for the front burner. They turn it. There is a series of sharp clicks. Click, click, click. Then, a soft, sudden whoosh. A circle of blue flame erupts from the burner, a silent, dancing crown of fire. It casts flickering shadows on the wall. It casts a hellish blue light on the faces in the photograph. The heat washes over my hand, the one holding the picture. It begins to lower, down, 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 toward the waiting, hungry flame. I can feel the warmth growing, turning to a searing heat on the glass. I am screaming. I am begging. I am crying inside my own head, but my arm does not stop. My hand does not tremble. It is steady. It is methodical. It is doing its work. The corner of the silver frame is inches from the blue fire. The faces are still smiling, oblivious, forgiving. And I let it fall. The stench of burnt plastic and paper filled the apartment. It was a chemical, acrid smell that clung to the back of my throat and coated my tongue. I stood frozen before the stove, my eyes fixed on the stovetop. Black flakes, the delicate ghosts of my parents' smiling faces, swirled in the heat, shimmering off the burner before settling like morbid snow on the white enamel. I watched the last corner of the silver frame, the metal now blackened and warped, curl into nothing. The glass had cracked into 1,000 tiny fissures, obscuring the melted horror beneath. My throat was dry, so dry. A part of me, a deep and terrible part I didn't recognize, felt a sense of completion. The task was done. The line item could be checked. I was a good boy. He. The giggle echoed my thought, a wisp of sound from the bathroom vent. It was fainter this time, like a half-remembered tune. Or maybe I was just getting used to it. The thought sent a jolt of ice through my veins. My body was a machine made of lead. I couldn't move. I could only stare at the funeral pyre I had created. The blue flame of the burner still danced, a cheerful, malevolent little demon. My bloody right hand, the one that had turned the knob, hung at my side, throbbing in time with my pulse. My left hand, the traitor that had dropped the frame, felt strangely clean, culpable. I needed to turn off the stove. I needed to open a window. I needed to scream until my lungs tore. I did none of these things. I just stood there, a statue in a desecrated temple. Scrape. The sound was soft, but it cut through my stupor like a shard of glass. It came from the front door. I flinched, my whole body tensing up. My eyes shot from the stove to the door. Something was sliding under it, a sliver of white paper inching its way into my apartment. I jumped back, a strangled gasp escaping my lips. My back hit the counter. The pain was distant. My focus was locked on that piece of paper. It stopped. It lay there, a pale rectangle on the dusty floor, an alien object in my sealed world. Then, a voice. It was loud, shouted through the wood, and so aggressively cheerful it sounded like a weapon. "Hey, neighbor! Kyle! From 3B, thought you might be hungry!" The words bounced around the room, manic and hollow. They didn't belong here, not with the smell of burning and the ghost giggle in the vent. My heart, which had been a dull, heavy stone, started pounding, a frantic, terrified rabbit against my ribs. I didn't answer. I didn't breathe. I pressed myself against the wall next to the door, listening. "Left a menu for you. Best damn noodles in the city." The voice boomed again, followed by a hearty, unconvincing laugh. I heard his footsteps, heavy and quick, moving away down the hall. They faded. The sound of the ancient elevator, groaning to life a moment later, confirmed he was leaving, but his shadow didn't. I could see it under the door, a black smear, the shapes of his shoes. A normal person would have walked away, the shadow would have gone with them, but his shadow stayed. It was motionless, A solid, dark presence just on the other side of the door. My blood ran cold. I watched it, not daring to move a muscle. The silence in the apartment was a roaring pressure in my ears. The hum of the refrigerator was gone. The hiss of the gas burner was gone. The only sound was the frantic drumming in my chest and the whistle of my own breath through my teeth. The world had shrunk to me and that unmoving, impossible shadow. 1 minute passed. It felt like an hour, a year. It was a test, a game, and I had no idea what the rules were. Then, as suddenly as it had appeared, it was gone. The black smear vanished. He was gone, really gone. Cold sweat broke out on the back of my neck. I waited. Another 30 seconds, another minute. Nothing. Just the familiar, oppressive stillness of my apartment. I pushed myself off the wall and moved cautiously, one slow step at a time, toward the door. I knelt down. My hand, the clean one, trembled as it reached for the paper. It was a takeout menu. Glossy, folded paper. Bright red letters advertised Noodle King. I flipped it over. My breath hitched in my throat. Scrawled on the back in thick red pen were 4 words. The handwriting was a childish, looping scrawl. "You're doing great." This is impossible. My head was spinning with questions. Kyle? The frat boy from down the hall. How could he know? Was he watching? Listening? Was he one of them? A part of this whatever it was? I scrambled back on my hands and knees, away from the door, the menu clutched in my fist. The paper crumpled. I felt like a cornered animal. My eyes scanned the room, looking for a way out. But there was no way out. The door was a threat. The window looked out onto a solid brick wall. The phone was a conduit for that smooth, predatory voice. The vent was a playground for a laughing child. My gaze fell on the kitchen counter, on the yellow legal pad. I forced myself to my feet. The journey from the door to the counter was the longest walk of my life. Every creak of the floorboards was an accusation. I leaned over. The list. A new line had been drawn. A thick, merciless black slash through the 4th item. 4. Burn the photo. The ink was dark and final. The pen lay beside it, exactly as I had left it. I had no memory of walking back here. No memory of picking up the pen. No memory of the grim satisfaction of crossing another task off my list. It was another piece of my life that had been carved out and thrown away. A black space where a memory should be. My eyes, against my will, against every remaining shred of sanity, drifted down the page. And there it was. It was written in the same steady, familiar hand. My hand. A new command, waiting, patiently. 5. Carve liar into the desk. No. Oh no. I looked over at my desk. It was the one good thing in this whole miserable apartment. A solid oak desk my grandfather had made. I'd spent my first 2 freelance checks having it professionally restored. The surface was a deep, rich brown, polished to a perfect shine. It was where I worked. It was where I created. It was the last piece of me that felt solid, that felt real. The word on the page seemed to pulse. Liar. Who was the liar? Me? Was this a punishment? For what? For pretending I was a normal person, a functional graphic designer with deadlines and a future. For pretending I wasn't falling apart at the seams. I backed away from the list. I stumbled into the living area, putting space between me and that yellow sheet of paper. But it didn't matter. The command was already in my head, a seed that had been planted. I could feel its roots spreading, cold and thin through my brain. I felt as if an invisible hand was squeezing me. The air was so thick that breathing was difficult. No, I mouthed the word. It had no sound. I won't. I closed my eyes. I saw the deep, smooth grain of the wood, my grandfather's initials, carved subtly on the underside. I saw myself at that desk, sketching, designing, making something out of nothing. It was my anchor, my proof of worth. Are you making progress on your other tasks for the day? The client's voice, smooth as silk. Some chores just have to be done, dearie. Mrs. Gable's dry whisper. He. The child's approval. They were all here, waiting, watching. My eyes snapped open. I was staring at the bathroom. The doorway was a dark maw rimmed by the shattered remains of my reflection. A universe of glittering glass lay on the floor, a tool. My body moved. It was not my decision. My legs, stiff and robotic, began to carry me toward the bathroom. I was screaming inside my own skull, a frantic, useless roar of protest. Don't do it. Please just stop moving. But I didn't stop. I stepped over the threshold, the glass crunching under my shoe like bones. My eyes scanned the floor. There were hundreds of pieces, big ones, small ones. I knelt down, my hand hovering over the wreckage. I was not looking for any piece. I was looking for the right one. My fingers found it, a long, cruel-looking shard, a tapered dagger of silvered glass. The edges were razor-sharp. I closed my fist around the wider end. The back of it was smooth and cool against my palm. The front was a weapon. I pushed myself to my feet, the shard held tight in my hand. I turned. I walked out of the bathroom. I walked back toward the desk. Each step was a surrender. I stood before it. The polished surface reflected the dim light from the window. I could see a distorted version of my own face looking back up at me. A face of horror. A face of despair. A liar's face. My arm lifted, the arm holding the shard of glass. It rose until the point of the dagger was aimed directly at the heart of the desk. I could feel the grain of the wood through the air. I could smell the lemon polish I used on it every Sunday. A ritual, a small act of order in a life of chaos, and I was about to destroy it. My hand trembled. For a second I thought it was me, a final, desperate rebellion from my own nervous system. But it wasn't fear, it was anticipation, a strange, eager energy thrumming through my arm, the same energy that had smashed the mirror, the same methodical purpose that had clipped my nails to the quick. My jaw was clenched so tight my teeth ached. My other hand, the bloody one, gripped the edge of the desk. My knuckles were white. I leaned over the desk. The mirror shard was tight in my fist. I pressed the point into the wood. The first sound was a high, thin scream of tortured varnish. Scrape. The sound went through my teeth and vibrated deep inside my skull. It was a sound of violation, of irreversible damage, a scar on something perfect. A single tear rolled down my cheek. It dripped onto the wood, a few inches from the nascent wound. I drew the shard down. The wood groaned and splintered under the pressure. I began to carve the first letter. L. The last splinter of oak fell away. My arm dropped to my side, the shard of mirror slipping from my numb fingers. It clattered onto the floor, a sound too small for the violence it had just committed. Liar. The word was a canyon carved into the heart of my desk, a raw, pale wound in the dark, polished wood. Shavings, like curls of dead skin, littered the surface. My blood, smeared and tacky from the hand I'd used to steady myself, crusted the edges of the letters. It looked obscene, a desecration. I tasted copper. A hot metallic tang flooded my mouth. I raised a trembling hand to my lips. They were wet. I hadn't even realized I'd bitten my own lip raw, chewing on it with the same mindless intensity that had guided the glass shard. The pain bloomed late, a dull, throbbing protest. I stood there, a statue of ruin in the middle of my self-made chaos. I couldn't look away from the desk, my grandfather's desk, my desk. Now, it was just a monument to a lie. But whose lie? Mine? Theirs? What the hell is going on? The question was a whimper in my mind. It had no answer. It only circled back on itself, a snake eating its own tail. The air was thick with the smell of scorched plastic from the stove and the new sharp scent of violated wood. Flicker. A flash of light from the hallway. It painted a transient, distorted rectangle on the wall opposite my front door. Flicker. There it was again. I finally tore my eyes from the desk, my head turning slowly, a rusty hinge. The peephole on my door. It was a tiny black circle, but each time the hall light flashed, it ignited. A bright, accusing dot. An eye. On, off, on, off. The rhythm was not random. It was a maddening, mechanical pulse. Flicker buzz, pause. Flicker buzz, pause. It was the beat to a song didn't want to hear. Goosebumps crawled up my arms, 1,000 tiny insects marching over my skin. I felt watched. Not just by the thing that had been outside before, but by the building itself. The hall light was looking at me. I had to make it stop. My muscles tensed up. The need for action was a physical command, cutting through the fog of shock. My phone was on the kitchen counter, next to the list. I avoided looking at the yellow paper as I grabbed the device. My thumb, smeared with a bit of my own blood, smeared the screen as I swiped. I found the number for building management in my contacts. It rang twice. A click. Yeah. The voice was gravel in a tin can. Mr. Petrescu, the superintendent. Mr. Petrescu, it's Jack Miller in 4G. My own voice sounded thin, strange. Silence. Not a questioning silence. A waiting one, as if he knew why I was calling. The light in the hallway, I said, my voice gaining a desperate edge. It's flickering. On and off. I trailed off. How could I explain it? It feels like it's looking at me. He'd think I was insane. Maybe I was. A long pause. I could hear a faint sound on his end, like the whisper of a television in another room. When he finally spoke, his voice was utterly flat, devoid of emotion. Some things you shouldn't look at too closely. The words hit me like stones. It wasn't an answer. It wasn't a dismissal. It was a piece of advice, a warning. What? But it needs to be fixed. The building is old, he said. The sentence was a final statement, a closing argument. Then, the click. The line went dead. The dial tone buzzed in my ear, a monotonous insect. I lowered the phone, stared at it. The building is old. It was a reason for everything, and an answer to nothing. The creaking pipes, the groaning elevator, the laughing child in the vent, the watching light, flicker buzz. The light in the hall answered. It was still there, still watching. My whole body began to shake uncontrollably. It started in my hands and spread through my arms to my chest, a violent, rattling tremor. I couldn't stop it. I was a machine coming apart. I backed away from the door, my eyes locked on the winking peephole. I needed to block it out. I needed to hide. I needed to do something. My gaze fell back to the kitchen counter, to the yellow legal pad. A part of me screamed no, but my legs were already moving. I was drawn to it, a moth to a goddamn funeral pyre. I leaned over it, my shaking hands gripping the edge of the counter. The slash through item 5 was there. 5. Carve liar into the desk. A brutal black line, just like the others, cross-referenced with the wound in my living room and the blood on my lips. Another blank space in my memory. Another task completed by the stranger wearing my skin. And beneath it, a new line waited, written in my own meticulous, damning script. 6. Barricade the door. I read it once. Twice. My trembling stopped. A cold, profound clarity washed over me. Of course. It wasn't a chore. It wasn't a punishment. It was a solution. The flickering light, The shadow under the door. Mrs. Gable's knowing nod, Kyle's manic cheerfulness, Mr. Petrescu's chilling pronouncement. They were all outside. The danger was outside. The list wasn't trying to make me hurt myself, it was trying to make me safe. This is impossible. The thought was weak, a dying spark. Logic was a foreign language now. The list had its own logic. Reflexively, I turned. My eyes scanned the room, my sanctuary, my prison. It needed walls, real walls. My bookshelf. It stood against the far wall, heavy and solid, loaded with graphic novels and design theory books. It was my biggest piece of furniture besides the bed. Without a moment's hesitation, I rushed straight towards it. I placed my hands on the rough particle board. I dug my fingers in and pulled. Nothing. It was heavier than I remembered, weighted down with paper and ink and years of accumulation. I grunted, my teeth clenched, my back screamed. I put my shoulder into it and heaved. Scrape! The sound was 100 times worse than the glass on the desk. It was the shriek of a large animal being dragged to slaughter. The legs of the bookshelf carved two deep parallel gouges into the dusty wood of the floor. Dust motes danced in the gloom. I heaved again. The bookshelf lurched forward a few more inches. Sweat was pouring down my face, stinging the cut on my lip. My muscles burned. Each lurch, each scrape was a victory. I was building a fortress. I was taking control. The bookshelf thumped hard against the back of the front door. It covered the peephole. The maddening flicker buzz from the hall was finally gone, replaced by a solid wall of wood and paper. I wasn't done. That wasn't enough. A barricade needed to be impassable. My desk. I looked at it. At the word, liar. It was already ruined, defiled. Now it would serve a new purpose. Its weight would become a strength. I went to the far side, the side my grandfather had initialed underneath. I gripped the edge. The smooth, polished wood felt cool under my bloody fingers. I pulled. It was heavier than the bookshelf. It was solid oak. Real. My back shrieked. A sharp, hot pain shot up my spine. I cried out, a guttural noise of pure animal effort. The desk slid. It groaned in protest. A deeper, more resonant sound than the bookshelf. Another set of scars on my floor. I didn't care. The floor didn't matter. Only the door mattered. I wedged the desk sideways behind the bookshelf, creating an interlocking puzzle of heavy wood. No one was getting through that. No one. I was panting, my lungs on fire. I stumbled back, my chest heaving. My heart was pounding, a frantic drum against my ribs. The air was so thick that breathing was difficult. I leaned against the kitchen counter, every muscle in my body screaming. It still wasn't enough. My chair, my expensive, ergonomic work chair. I grabbed it, the wheels rattling, and wedged it under the knob of the desk drawer, adding one last point of pressure to the chaotic pile. I stood back and looked at my work. Bookshelf, desk, chair. A mountain of my own life piled against the door. An impassable jumble of wood and metal and history. My back was pressed against the wall of my own making. The apartment was sealed. No one could get in, and I could not get out. A strange calm descended. The work was done. The fortress was built. I slid down the wall, my legs giving out until I was sitting on the floor. The silence was immense. The building's usual groans and creaks were muffled, distant. The manic pulse of the hall light was gone. There was only the sound of my own ragged breath and the low, steady hum of the refrigerator. I was safe. I had followed the instructions. I was safe. I let my head fall back against the wall, closing my eyes. For the first time in hours, the frantic energy receded. I was exhausted, so utterly, completely exhausted. The pain in my knuckles, the sting on my lip, the fire in my back. It all faded to a dull, distant ache. My phone lay on the floor a few feet away, where I dropped it after the call. The screen was dark, an inert black rectangle. It lit up. The sudden light made me flinch. My eyes snapped open. A notification had appeared, a text message. My throat went dry. I crawled over to it, my hands shaking again. The brief calm shattered. The message was from an unknown number. My heart hammered against my ribs. I tapped the screen. The message opened. The timestamp read 11:11 p.m. Below it, 5 words. 5 words that turned my blood to ice. 5 words that made the thick, heavy barricade feel like it was made of paper. You're falling behind schedule. My body was a dead weight on the floor, propped up by the wall. The barricade loomed in the gloom, a jagged mountain range of my own making. Behind it, I was sealed. I was contained. My ragged breaths were the only sound, each one a small, temporary victory against the crushing pressure in the room. The hum of the refrigerator was a low, constant drone, a single note holding the world together. I was safe. I let my eyes drift shut. My mind was a blank page, bleached by exhaustion. The phone lit up. The light was a violation. It sliced through the darkness behind my eyelids. My muscles tensed up. I didn't want to look. I didn't want to know. But my eyes snapped open anyway, drawn to the small, glowing rectangle on the floor. A text message. My heart, which had just begun to slow to something resembling a normal rhythm, started hammering against my ribs again, a frantic prisoner beating against its cage. I crawled. The movement was clumsy, a wounded animal. My knees scraped against the bare wood. The pain in my back flared, a hot reminder of the heaving and shoving. I reached the phone. My hand trembled as I picked it up. The cool glass felt alien against my skin. Unknown number. The words pulsed on the screen. My thumb hovered over the notification. Just leave it. Throw the phone against the wall. Shatter it. Make it go away. I tapped the screen. The timestamp was a knife twist, 11:11 p.m. Make a wish. Below it, the message. 5 words. You're falling behind schedule. My throat went dry. I read the words again and again. They didn't change. They didn't make sense. Schedule? What schedule? The list was a series of tasks, not a timeline, not a project with a deadline. This wasn't a client. This was something else. What the hell is going on? My head was spinning with questions, a vortex of fear and confusion. The barricade didn't feel safe anymore. It felt like a cage, a tomb. The message wasn't a threat from the outside. It was a progress report. It was an internal memo from the madness that was now running my life. The building was old, Petrescu had said, and I was falling behind. Flicker. It was faint. A sliver of light, so thin it was barely there. It appeared for a split second at the very bottom of the door, where the wood didn't quite meet the floor. Flicker, buzz. There it was again. The light from the hall. The watcher. The barricade hadn't blocked it. It had only funneled it, focused it into one tiny, insistent line. On, off, a single luminous crack in my fortress wall. It was taunting me. It knew I was in here. It knew I could see it. The pressure in my head returned, a familiar tightening band of steel. I couldn't just sit here. I couldn't just wait for the next message, the next instruction from the stranger in my own mind. I had to see. I had to know what was out there. Who was behind all this? The need was a physical craving, an itch under my skin that I had to scratch. My eyes landed on the peephole, now buried somewhere behind the desk and the bookshelf. To see, I would have to dismantle the very thing I had just built to protect myself. It was insane. Reflexively, I was on my feet. I moved toward the barricade. My barricade. It looked impassable, a chaotic pile of my own failures and fears. I put my hands on the ergonomic chair and pulled it free, the wheels clattering loudly in the tense air. I set it aside. Next, the desk. My desk. The carved word gleamed dully in the light from my phone screen. Liar. I climbed. I hauled myself onto the surface of the desk, my shoes slipping on a scattered pile of design magazines. My knuckles, raw and crusted with blood, protested as I used them for grip. I was on my hands and knees on top of the desk, a trespasser in my own home. I crawled over the surface, my own blood smearing onto my jeans. The bookshelf was next. I had to stretch, my body contorting awkwardly, to get a foothold on one of the lower shelves. A stack of paperbacks slid out and cascaded to the floor with a series of soft thuds. I froze, held my breath and listened. Nothing. Only the low hum of the fridge and the faint rhythmic flicker from under the door. I kept climbing. I was an ungainly insect scaling a junk pile. I finally reached the door, my chest pressed against the cool, solid wood. My back ached. My body screamed. I felt for the peephole with my fingertips. There. The small, cold circle of metal. I pressed my eye against it. My world narrowed to a single, distorted, fish-eye lens view of the hallway. It was empty. The paint on the opposite wall was peeling, the carpet was stained, and the light fixture, a grim fly-specked glass bowl, flickered with that same maddening mechanical pulse. Flicker buzz. Flicker buzz. I was about to pull away, a wave of anticlimax washing over me. Maybe I was just losing my mind. Maybe there was nothing out there. Then something moved into the frame. It didn't walk. It didn't step. It simply appeared. A shape, a presence filling the lens. My blood froze. I could hear my heart pounding in my chest, a frantic drumming that seemed loud enough for the whole building to hear. It was tall, impossibly tall and rail-thin. The peephole figure, it was a silhouette of pure, featureless black, absorbing the flickering light without reflecting any of it. It wore no clothes I could discern. It had no face. It was just a man-shaped hole in the world. It stood perfectly still, directly in front of my door. Its presence was a physical weight, pressing against the other side of the wood, a pressure I could feel in my bones. I stared, unable to breathe, unable to look away. My muscles were locked, my eye glued to the peephole. 1,000 questions screamed in my head. What is this? Who sent it? Is it the one sending the texts? Is this the him the vent child spoke of? The figure did nothing. It just stood there, motionless, waiting. The silence from the hallway was immense, a heavy blanket that smothered all other sound. This was its voice, the oppressive, suffocating character of its silence. Minutes stretched into an eternity. My eye began to water from the strain. The flickering light from the overhead fixture strobed across its form, making its edges seem to writhe and shift, but the thing itself remained a pillar of absolute stillness. This is impossible. The thought was a weak whisper, but there it was, real, undeniable. Just as suddenly as it appeared, it was gone. There was no sound of footsteps, no whisper of cloth. One flicker of the hall light showed the shape, solid and terrifying. The next flicker showed an empty hallway. It had simply vanished, ceased to exist. I kept staring, my heart still a jackhammer in my chest. I waited. For a sound, for a shadow, for anything. The hallway remained empty. The only movement was the pulsing, indifferent light. A breath I didn't know I was holding escaped my lungs in a ragged, shuddering gasp. I sagged against the door, the strength draining from my limbs. Relief, so potent it was nauseating, washed over me. It was gone. I had seen it, and it was gone. Maybe I'd scared it away. Maybe it had just been checking the schedule. Was I on schedule? My eye was still pressed to the lens. I blinked, trying to clear the image of the shape from my vision. But something was wrong. The view was blurry, smudged, as if a film of oil was coating the glass. I pulled my head back slowly. My focus shifted from the distorted hallway to the peephole itself, to my side of the door. Something was on the lens. I squinted. The light from my phone, still lying on the floor, cast long shadows up the door, illuminating the tiny circle of glass. There, marring the center of the lens, was a mark, a whirl of lines, a perfect, greasy fingerprint. On my side of the door, a cold dread, far deeper and more chilling than the sight of the figure, seeped into my marrow. I stared at the print. It was impossible. I hadn't touched the peephole. I had been on the other side of the room. The figure was outside. The print was inside. How can this be? I stumbled backwards off the bookshelf, my feet finding no purchase. I crashed down onto the desk, my arm knocking my laptop to the floor with a sickening crack of plastic. I slid off the edge and landed hard on my side amidst the fallen books. Pain shot through my hip, but I barely felt it. My eyes were locked on the door, on the fingerprint. The threat wasn't outside. It was never outside. It was in here. It had been in here the whole time. It touched my door. It was in my apartment. Maybe it was still here. Goosebumps erupted across my entire body. A violent shiver ran down my spine. My gaze darted around the dark corners of the room. The shadows seemed to deepen, to coalesce. Was that a shape in the corner by the bathroom? Was that a movement near the window? Every mundane object became a source of potential terror. My back pressed against the wall. My eyes scanned the room, desperately searching for a threat I could not see. The air was so thick that breathing was difficult. I crawled away from the door, away from the barricade that now felt like a joke, a child's fort against a hurricane. I was moving backwards, like a crab, scrambling away from the horrifying truth of the fingerprint. My hand bumped into something hard and cool, my laptop. It lay face down on the floor where it had fallen. I had yanked its cord from the wall earlier, stomped on the modem. It was dead, disconnected, just a block of plastic and metal. I pushed myself up, my body shaking uncontrollably. I needed to get away. I needed to hide. But where? Where do you hide from something that can leave its fingerprints on the inside of a locked door? I caught a glimpse of movement. I froze, my head snapping towards the laptop. Its screen was black, a dark, reflective mirror, and in it, a face was staring back at me. My face, my reflection. My own face was a mask of stark terror. My eyes were wide, wild with panic. My mouth was a thin, tight line. The cut on my lip was a dark slash. Sweat beaded on my forehead. This was the face of a man who had lost all control, who was at the mercy of forces he could not comprehend. But the face in the laptop screen, it was different. It was my face, yes. Same hair, same eyes, same scar on the chin. But the expression was wrong. The reflection wasn't terrified. It wasn't panicked. It was calm. It was watching me. Its lips were quirked into the faintest hint of a smile, a look of detached, serene satisfaction, a look of pleasure. I stared, my mind refusing to process what my eyes were seeing. I raised a trembling hand to my face, touching my own skin. My flesh was cold, clammy. In the black screen, my reflection's hand did not move. It simply watched me, its eyes full of a placid amusement. It was the face of the man who wrote the list, the stranger in my skin, the part of me that was enjoying this. And as I stared into those calm, triumphant eyes, my own eyes, I understood. The barricade was never meant to keep anything out. It was meant to keep me in. My head hit the floor. The world didn't spin. It just ended. One frame, I was staring into the calm, pleased eyes of my own reflection in the dead screen of the laptop. The next frame was just black. A hard, dreamless cut. I woke to the cold. It seeped through my t-shirt, a damp chill from the wooden floorboards. The air in the apartment was frigid, stagnant. My cheek was pressed against the rough grain of the wood. A splinter pricked my skin. I shifted, and a groan escaped my lips. A deep, aching pain blossomed in my hip, a fiery reminder of the fall. How long was I out? I rolled onto my back, my eyes struggling to focus in the gloom. The only light was the faint ghostly glow from my phone, still lying several feet away. The numbers on its screen meant nothing. Time was a concept from another life. I sat up. The movement was a colossal effort. My head throbbed, a dull, heavy pulse behind my eyes. My right hand hurt, a strange, cramped ache. I looked down at it. A fork was clutched in my fist. My fingers were wrapped around it so tightly the knuckles were white. It was one of mine, from the single drawer in the kitchenette. The prongs were bent, twisted into a mangled claw. One of them had been snapped clean off. My palm screamed where the handle had dug into it. I had no memory of getting it, no memory of holding it. My mind was a slate, wiped clean from the moment my reflection smiled at me. I dropped the fork. It clattered against the floor, a sharp metallic sound that seemed to echo for years in the heavy air. My gaze was drawn to the source of my fall, to the laptop. It lay on its back, the screen a black void. But something was different. I crawled towards it, my knees protesting, scraping against the wood. I reached out a trembling hand and turned it over. The webcam. Its tiny glass eye, the one I always covered with a piece of tape, was destroyed. It wasn't just cracked, it was obliterated. A series of deep, vicious scratches crisscrossed the lens, gouging the plastic casing around it. The surface was a milky, ruined mess. Blind, I saw the jagged furrow left by a single sharp point, a fork tine. What is this? The question wasn't a thought, it was a physical jolt. A wave of nausea rolled through me. This was the work of my hand, the fork, the scratches. It happened while I was gone, while the other one was driving. The calm one, the one who was making progress. The list. The word seared itself into my brain. I had to see the list. I scrambled to my feet, ignoring the fire in my hip. I lurched towards the cluttered countertop where I'd left it. It wasn't there. My eyes darted around, not on the floor, not on the fridge. My heart started to hammer against my ribs, a frantic, trapped bird. Where is it? Who moved it? My eyes scanned the room, a wild sweep of the shadows and the junk, and then they stopped. They locked onto the door, onto the barricade. It was there, the single sheet of yellow legal paper. It was stuck flat against the inside of my front door, right at eye level. There was no tape, no magnet. It was just there, pressed against the wood as if held by its own malevolent will. I moved towards it, a moth drawn to a poisoned flame. I had to climb again. I hoisted myself back up onto the desk, my blood from before now dry and flaking on the surface. I balanced precariously, my body shaking, and leaned over the chasm of the bookshelf. There it was, my handwriting, my tasks. 1. Take out trash. Crossed out. 2. Clip all fingernails down to the quick. Crossed out. 3. Smash the bathroom mirror. Crossed out. 4. Burn the photo of your parents. Crossed out. 5. Scratch liar into the desk. Crossed out. 6. Barricade the door. Crossed out. And a new line. Number 7. A line that wasn't there when I built my fortress. A line written in my same neat hand, and beside it a confident clean strike-through. A job well done. 7. Blind the eye. Crossed out. I stared at it. The words swam. My throat closed up. He had blinded the eye. The webcam. The little black eye that watched me work, that watched me descend into this nightmare. He did it while I was unconscious, a neat bit of housekeeping, a task completed. A giggle echoed faintly from the bathroom vent, a dry, satisfied little sound. Good. I needed the pen. The thought was an obsession, the pen I had used to cross off the other items. The Pilot G2 0.7mm black ink. My pen. I needed to see it, to hold it, to prove what? I didn't know. I just needed it. I slid off the desk, landing with a jarring thud. I rushed to the counter where I'd last seen it. It was gone. The whole area was empty, wiped clean. I searched the floor around the desk. Nothing. My breathing grew ragged. My eyes scanned the room. Where is it? Where did he put it? This wasn't a search. It was a frenzy. I was a rat in a trap, tearing at the walls. I threw papers from my desk, a blizzard of invoices and sketches. I upended the trash can, sending stale coffee grounds and crumpled tissues scattering across the floor. Not there. I kicked it aside. The bed. I lunged for it. I grabbed the edge of the cheap comforter and yanked. It slid to the floor in a heap. The pillows. I threw them against the wall. 1, 2. They landed with soft, pathetic thuds. I grabbed the top sheet and ripped it away. Then the fitted sheet. I tore at the corner, my raw knuckles scraping against the mattress. The elastic band snapped with a sound like a whip crack. Nothing, just the bare, stained mattress. My body was shaking uncontrollably. I was on my hands and knees, panting. It wasn't here. It was gone. He took it. He used it, and then he made it disappear. How can this be? My gaze fell on the pillows I had thrown. One of them had landed upside down. The other lay beside it, flat on its back. My pillow, the one I slept on every night, the one with the slight depression where my head went. There, lying in the center of that faint depression, was my pen. It hadn't been thrown there. It hadn't fallen there by accident. It was placed, perfectly centered, lying neatly on the white cotton, waiting for me, as if it had been left on a nightstand after a long day's work. I stared. My mind simply refused to connect the dots. The frantic, violent search, the calm, deliberate placement. Two separate realities colliding in my cramped, wrecked apartment. I crawled over to it. I reached out a hand, then stopped. I couldn't touch it. It felt sacred, profane. It was evidence of a crime I had no memory of, left by a perpetrator who lived behind my own eyes. He had scratched out the webcam, walked to my bed, pulled back the covers, placed the pen neatly under my pillow, and then smoothed the sheets back over it. All while I was gone. A dog started barking next door. It was Mrs. Gable's little terrier, a constant yapping annoyance. Its frantic barks were muffled by the wall, but they were sharp, insistent. It was a sound I'd heard 1,000 times, a normal sound. In the crushing unreality of my apartment, that barking was an anchor, a link to a world where things made sense, a world where dogs barked and pens stayed where you left them. I held my breath and listened. The barking was getting more frantic, a desperate, panicked sound. It wasn't just barking at a squirrel or the mailman. This was different. Then came the yelp. It was sudden, sharp and high-pitched, a sound of pure pain, cut off mid-cry. Then, silence. Not a pause, not a lull, a heavy, final silence. The barking was gone. The anchor was gone. The world outside my wall had just gone wrong. A shiver ran down my spine. My skin prickled with goosebumps. I stayed perfectly still, on my hands and knees on the cold floor, my eyes locked on the wall that separated my apartment from hers. I strained my ears, listening for a door opening, for Mrs. Gable's shuffling footsteps, for her reedy voice scolding the animal. Nothing. The silence pressed in. It felt heavier than the barricaded door. It felt like a presence. I could hear my own heart pounding in my ears, a loud, panicked drum in the dead air. Then I heard it, a sound from the other side of the wall. It was faint at first. I wasn't sure I'd heard it at all. I held my breath, my muscles tensed. Scrape. It was a wet sound, a dragging sound. Scrape. Drag. It was low to the floor. The sound of something heavy and soaked being pulled slowly across a wooden surface. It wasn't a piece of furniture. It wasn't footsteps. It was a thick, syrupy, friction-filled noise. A sound that belonged in a slaughterhouse, not in the apartment of an old woman next door. My back pressed against the frame of my bed. I couldn't move. I couldn't breathe. My eyes were wide, fixed on the peeling paint of the wall, as if I could see through it. The sound continued, steady and unhurried. A wet, rhythmic scraping that was getting closer, moving towards the wall we shared, moving towards me. The sound was gone. The thick, wet scraping from Mrs. Gable's apartment had stopped. I was huddled on the floor, the splintered frame of my bed pressed hard against my spine. The silence that rushed in to fill the void was a physical weight. It was worse than the noise. It was a listening silence, a waiting silence. It held the echo of a yelp and the memory of a dragging weight. My muscles were locked, rigid. I held my breath, straining to hear something, anything. A footstep, a cough, the creak of a floorboard. Nothing. The building was dead. The pipes were not groaning. The elevator was not rattling in its shaft. The whole world had shrunk to this room and the wall I shared with whatever had happened next door. My hand was cold. I looked down. I was clutching a long, curved shard of the bathroom mirror. The edges were razor-sharp, glittering faintly in the ghostly light of my phone's screen across the room. My knuckles were white. The point was aimed at the wall, a useless weapon against a sound that had already ended. My eyes scanned the room, my prison, my creation. It was a war zone. The desk was gouged, the word liar a permanent scar on its surface. Shreds of my diploma lay like confetti next to the overturned trash can. In the kitchenette, a dark smear on the stove burner was all that remained of my parents' faces. My laptop lay blinded. My knuckles were raw, bleeding monuments to a series of tasks I had performed with the terrifying obedience of a sleepwalker. This is impossible. The thought was a pinprick of light in a universe of blackness. I was on my hands and knees in the wreckage of my own life, listening to a murderous silence from my neighbor's apartment, clutching a piece of broken glass. My body was a roadmap of self-inflicted wounds. My mind was a sieve, leaking memories. What is this? What is happening to me? A migraine? A breakdown? Some kind of psychotic fugue state? The questions, for the first time, weren't just frantic bursts of panic. They were logical. They were diagnostic. My mind, the part of me that prided itself on order and reason, was fighting its way back to the surface. It was gasping for air. I am having a breakdown. The thought was not terrifying. It was liberating. It was an anchor. A mental illness was an explanation. It wasn't a curse. It wasn't a ghost in the machine. It wasn't a demon whispering through the vents. It was a fault in my own wiring. And if it was a fault, it could be addressed. It could be fought. Help. The word bloomed in my mind. A simple, powerful concept. I needed help. Not from the superintendent, not from some hollow-voiced client on the phone. Real help. I needed to get out of this apartment. I needed to be in a hospital. I needed to be somewhere bright and sterile, where people with calm voices could ask me questions and stop me from hurting myself. The clarity of it was a jolt of electricity. I looked at the door, at the mountain I had built, the desk, the bookshelf, my chair, a monument to fear, constructed by the part of me that was sick. Now, the other part, the survivor, had to tear it down. I let the mirror shard fall from my numb fingers. It clinked against the floorboards. I didn't need it. It was a tool of the madness, not the escape. I pushed myself up. My body screamed. Pain flared in my hip from the fall. My legs trembled like newborn colts, weak from adrenaline and disuse. I put a hand against the wall to steady myself. The paint was cool and solid under my palm, real. I could do this. I had to do this. One step, then another. I moved through the debris field of my evening, my stockinged feet crunching on something small. I didn't look down. My eyes were fixed on the goal, the barricade, the door, freedom. I reached the desk. It was just a piece of furniture. Heavy, yes, but just wood and metal. I had put it there. I could move it. I took a deep, shuddering breath. The first one that felt like it reached the bottom of my lungs. The stale metallic air of the room burned, but it was fuel. My muscles tensed up. I planted my feet, found my balance. I looked at my hands, the bloody knuckles, the fingernails clipped down to the raw pink quick. These were the hands that had done the damage. Now they would undo it. They would save me. I placed them flat against the scarred surface of the desk. The wood was cold, solid. I braced myself. I was going to push. I was going to shove it with every ounce of strength I had left. I was going to scrape it back across the floor inch by painful inch until I could get to the locks, until I could open that door and run. I would run down the hallway. I would not look at Mrs. Gable's door. I would run down the stairs, past the groaning elevator, out into the Chicago night. I would find someone, anyone. I would be free. I bent my knees. I took a final deep breath, and then the whisper came. It wasn't from the vent. It wasn't from the other side of the door. It was in my head. It was as clear and clean as if someone were standing right behind me, their lips pressed against my ear. It was the vent child's voice, stripped of all distortion, pure and bell-like. He's here. A wave of ice water crashed through my body, a chill so profound it felt like it was freezing my marrow. My muscles didn't just tense, they seized. I was paralyzed, my hands glued to the desk, my body locked in a half-crouch. The hope, the clarity, the desperate plan, it all evaporated in an instant, replaced by a dread so absolute it had a taste. It tasted like cold metal. My eyes, wide with a new kind of horror, darted downwards. My breath hitched in my throat. The list. It was on the floor by my feet, lying face up on the dusty wood. It must have fallen when I climbed over the desk earlier. The single sheet of yellow paper seemed to glow in the gloom. I could see the crossed-out lines from here, the neat, efficient slashes of my own pen. 1. Take out trash. Crossed out. 2. Clip all fingernails down to the quick. Crossed out. 3. Smash the bathroom mirror. Crossed out. 4. Burn the photo of your parents. Crossed out. 5. Scratch liar into the desk. Crossed out. 6. Barricade the door. Crossed out. 7. Blind the eye. Crossed out. 7 tasks, 7 steps into madness, all complete, all accounted for. My gaze drifted down the page. My heart hammered against my ribs, a frantic, sickening rhythm. My breath came in shallow, useless little puffs. There was a new line. It wasn't there before. It wasn't there when I saw it stuck to the door. Number 8. The handwriting was different. It was still mine. The same letters, the same slant. But it was wrong. It was a frantic, spidery scrawl. The lines were jagged, dug into the paper with a terrible pressure. It looked like it had been written by a hand in the grip of a seizure, a desperate final scribble, an instruction from a part of me that was utterly and completely lost. My eyes locked on the words. My mind tried to reject them, to unsee them, but they were there, inked into the paper, the final task, the last thing on the to-do list from hell. 8. Let him in. The words burned. They were not ink. They were acid, eating through the paper and into my brain. Let him in. My body was a statue of ice. My hands were still pressed flat against the desk, but the purpose was gone. The plan to escape was a distant, stupid dream from a lifetime ago. A moment of clarity that had been a lie. Just another trick. Another step in the sequence. My whole body was shaking uncontrollably. A violent, deep tremor that started in my bones and worked its way out. My breath was gone. I was just a hollow space where air used to be. My eyes were glued to the yellow sheet on the floor, to the final scrawled command. 8. Let him in. Let who in? The client? Kyle? The shape from the peephole? What is this? What is happening? The questions were useless now. They were the desperate chatter of a man already dead. The answer was in the whisper that still echoed in the hollows of my skull. He's here. And then I heard it. Knock, knock, knock. It wasn't loud. It wasn't angry. It was soft, polite, the kind of knock a neighbor makes when they're borrowing a cup of sugar. It was the calmest, most patient sound I had ever heard. And it was the most terrifying. It was a sound that had no need to be loud. It was a sound that knew it was expected. It was a sound that knew the door would open. It didn't have to break the door down. I was going to do it for him. A wave of pressure washed over me. I felt as if an invisible hand was squeezing me, crushing my ribs, forcing the last bit of air from my lungs. The sound of the knock echoed in the dead air of the apartment, then vanished, leaving a silence that was even heavier than before. A silence that was listening for the scrape of the barricade, for the click of the lock. No. A sound escaped my throat, a dry rasp. My legs gave out. I didn't fall. My arms, locked straight, held me up. My body slumped over the desk. My face was inches from the raw, gouged wood. I could see the splinters around the edges of the word liar. My word. My work. I tried to pull my hands back. I strained. I focused all my will, every last shred of my identity on a single command. Let go of the desk. Nothing happened. My hands were stone. They were bolted to the wood. The muscles in my arms were rigid, locked in place by a force that wasn't mine. I was a puppet. I was a passenger. I was screaming inside a body that had stopped listening to me. No, I whispered again, the word catching in my throat. It was as dry as dust. No, 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 no. The chant was a pathetic prayer, a ward against the inevitable. My mind raced, a frantic animal in a cage. This is a breakdown. You're having a psychotic episode. This isn't real. The knock wasn't real. The list isn't real. You are in control. But I wasn't. The proof was right there, in the unyielding tension of my own biceps, in the way my fingers were fused to the desk. I pulled harder. My mind screamed the order. I put everything I was into that one action. A grunt of effort tore from my lips. My shoulders shuddered. The muscles in my back bunched and burned. My hands didn't move an inch. It was impossible. This is impossible. And then the trembling in my right hand changed. It was no longer the frantic shiver of fear. It became a slower, more deliberate vibration, a thrumming, an awakening. I watched, horrified, as my index finger twitched. Just once. A small, independent motion. Stop, I begged my own hand. It twitched again. Then slowly, with a smoothness that defied the panic storming inside my head, my right hand began to move. It didn't lift. It slid. It glided across the scarred surface of the desk like a planchette on a Ouija board. My mind screamed, but my arm moved with a calm, terrifying grace. It wasn't my hand anymore. It was his, an extension of the will that was waiting patiently on the other side of the door. I was a spectator to my own betrayal. My hand crept across the wood, my fingers tracing the jagged canyon of the L, then the I, the A, the R. It was as if it were reading the confession I had carved there, acknowledging my sin before proceeding. The friction of my skin on the damaged wood was a sound louder than a gunshot in the dead air. A soft, dry shh, a horrible parody of a comforting sound, a sound of finality. My gaze was locked on the monstrous, deliberate crawl of my own flesh. I could see the blood caked under the raw, clipped nail of my index finger. I could see the white of my knuckles. It was a piece of me, a part of my own body, and it was working for the enemy. It was opening the gate from the inside. What the hell is going on? Who is behind all this? The questions were ghosts. The logic, the reason I had clung to just minutes before, was a joke. There was no logic here. There was only the list. There was only the knock. And there was only the final task. My sliding hand reached the edge of the desk. The cold, sharp corner pressed into my palm. My fingers curled over the side, gripping it. The knuckles went white with a pressure I wasn't creating. My arm was a steel rod, humming with a power that flowed into it from somewhere else, from the listening silence, from the other side of the door. My left hand, which had remained frozen in place, suddenly clenched into a fist. The pain of the split knuckles, of the sliced skin, flared anew. A hot, sharp reminder of my earlier compliance. A jolt to remind me what happened when I followed the instructions. I squeezed my eyes shut. I couldn't watch anymore. I couldn't witness my own hand destroy me. Don't do it. Please, please, don't do it. Whoever you are, whatever you are, stop. Please stop. I was begging, praying to my own hijacked limbs, to the unseen puppeteer. The whisper came again, inside my head. Not the child's voice this time. It was the client. That impossibly smooth corporate voice from the phone, laced with its chilling, predatory amusement. You're falling behind schedule, Jack. A sob broke from my lips. A pathetic, wet sound. Tears streamed from my closed eyes, hot tracks down my cold face. It was real, all of it. Mrs. Gable's knowing nod, Kyle's manic cheerfulness, Petrescu's dismissal. They all knew. They were all part of it. This building wasn't just old, it was hungry. And it was my turn to set the table. My eyes snapped open. I had to look. I had to see the end. I couldn't die in the dark. My gaze dropped from my traitorous hand and fell to the floor, to the debris field, to the large, curved shard of mirror that had fallen from my hand earlier. It lay there, face up, a jagged piece of sky in a world of dust and wood. And in it, I saw a reflection. My face. It was a mask of pure, abject terror. Unrecognizable. The face of a man being vivisected while still alive. The eyes were wide, bloodshot, streaming tears. The mouth was a slack-jawed O of horror. The skin was pale, waxy, glistening with a cold sweat that broke out on the back of my neck. It was the face of my soul. It was the real me, the prisoner, screaming from behind the glass. I stared at that face, at that perfect reflection of my agony, and as I watched my own terrified eyes in the mirror shard, my right hand, my strong hand, gripped the edge of the heavy desk. The muscles in my arm and shoulder contracted with an inexorable, inhuman strength. It wasn't the frantic shove of a man trying to escape. It was the slow, steady push of a machine built for a single purpose. A deep groan shuddered through the wood. And then came the sound. The sound of the end. A high, piercing shriek of wood scraping against the worn floorboards. The sound of the barricade beginning to move. The sound of a lock I couldn't stop. A door I had to open. The sound of me letting him in.